Gang, what's happening? Truth Live Nation. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us right now. This is a conversation I'm super excited about having. Why? Because a good beacon of truth of what sort of the zeitgeist of what's important to folks, it usually shows up in the form of conversations. And since the new law got passed locally, I believe it was last year, right?
Yep.
It takes a little while for these things to kind of matriculate into actual practice. There are some local politicians that made good on some promises about trying to fix some of the density issues here locally. And one of the things in the crosshairs for years, as long as I can remember, is trying to find a cure for the ail of taking the existing improvements and inventory that already is there and sort of repurposing them to allow for more, versus the antithesis, which is the theory that always prevails, which is just more building from new construction scrape up, right? So my man over here, stage left, is Ian Scattergood. He is the brains behind the Permit Pros and a local expert on trying to kind of sort through the winds of change here in this new law around granny flats, ADUs, accessory dwelling units, in the attempt to try to take what already is for folks. You know, you might be that person right now who maybe bought something, like a lot of San Diegans that have maybe some illegal, we'll call that lovingly, illegal, unpermitted improvements, California room.
Non-documented square footage.
Right, maybe a carriage house, a little 1 or 2 car garage that got sheetrock up and being used for the failure to launch kid that won't go to college or whatever. And actually take that as an opportunity now, right? Where before it was kind of like the thing that no one wanted to kind of adopt, like someone else's problem. Now is an opportunity to actually, with a pretty reasonable little budget in mind and some help from a guy like this, turn that into real dollars that make sense. So Ian, for the folks that don't know you yet, perhaps maybe you can introduce who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into this.
Okay, my name is Ian Scattergood. My company name is the Permit Pro Consultant. Last August, I was in business 32 years. What I'm looking at now is I found a niche in 1991, and that was getting undocumented square footage, permitted, legal, appraisable, refinanceable, and sellable.
Yeah.
So I've saved over 600 non-permitted structures. Now, the beginning of 2017, building codes went up, but a new law came into effect that allows us to have a second dwelling unit on any California property.
Oh yeah.
So that is my big focus now. I have 12 of these ADUs either already permitted, in plan check, or in drafting the design in my office.
Yeah.
So I'm making this 90% of my business model is getting more ROI out of a single family zoned lot.
And that might not sound a lot to you, 12 in process or whatever. I'm kind of curious to the scope of everything this in San Diego County inventory-wise, if that's even moving the needle. But a lot of the reason why it's not yet is a lot of the reason why Ian's here, we want to talk about this, is because people don't understand it. It's kind of like the old diamonds buried in your backyard concept in play in real time right now locally. So gang, maybe a good place to start is let's just quickly define, not the whole abstract, but maybe the one sentence dumbed down version. What actually is this law spelled out?
As of January 1, 2017, any single family or multifamily zoned lot in the entire state of California can now have a second dwelling unit. We kind of easily refer to them as granny flats. The law is ADU, accessory dwelling unit.
Right. And that's an important piece too, because the ADU itself, that languaging specifically, also it prerequisites a couple elements that have to exist and some things that can't exist too.
Right.
So maybe just dovetail a little bit of that too to help further define.
So prior we might have used language like guest living quarters, second dwelling unit, accessory apartment, or in 2000 the city of San Diego came up with companion unit. So they raised the 640 square foot to 700 square foot. But prior to this law, you still had to put additional parking on the lot. So with the passing of this new law, which we'll get into, they've relaxed the standards on setbacks and parking, and it's really dynamic.
Right. Allowing for more things, again, that already exist to get repurposed to help out with some of these issues. And so, you know, maybe a good point to reference and contrast is, we mentioned the word issues a couple times, a good idea to sort of juxtapose from where it was. So one of the things that is creating this challenge is the bottleneck. I made the joke earlier, the failure to launch kids
Right.
that are still living with mom and dad. I got nothing wrong with that, by the way. Hey, entrepreneurs out there, do your thing. You know, couch crushing it, right? Living in the garage. I love it. Defer wealth as long as possible, young men and women out there. And then the other side of that is the folks, mom and dad, who now have to come back and live with the parents, right? And they're kind of getting sandwiched in. They got to deal with all three generations under one house, right? And then there's a third element, which people don't maybe popularize as much, but it's, hey, there's a great opportunity also to create an extra stream of rental income in some of these scenarios as well, right? So what's the main talking points of where we were, which are going to create the big opportunities?
Okay, so I kind of hit on a little bit was setbacks and parking. So with this new law, the second unit, if it's under 500 square foot, it really doesn't have to add any additional parking. If it's within a half mile of a transit stop, being trolley or bus, that also could be exempt from any additional parking. The big thing to get fast ROI is looking at if I have an existing permitted structure. So that's the key word, existing permitted.
Okay.
So let's take, we're going to have some slides and images later for you to understand that. But let's say we have a detached garage and it basically is in, maybe I'm going to throw some names out there, North Park, South Park, Burlingame, Kensington. They were the older setup homes. A lot of those are already artist studios, granny flats, in-laws, maybe somebody's using it as a detached office.
Well said.
Those were permitted. They had closer setbacks back in the year. And if it was originally permitted, I now, as long as it's at least 150 square feet, make it an ADU by putting a kitchenette in it at minimum and at least a 3/4 bath.
Kitchenette at minimum, 3/4 bath. And you can already tell just two things that are becoming clear. First of all, this is a complicated conversation.
Yes.
Requires somebody to actually have the map or the guide, you know, the cheat sheet, so to speak, to be able to kind of navigate everybody's individual situation and see if this applies. And secondly, also that you happen to have a good working relationship with some of these things and the challenges, and also the fact that they're area specific. Like it's not the county, it's not one size fits all. Every little community within the county is kind of choosing to kind of address this in their own way specifically. We might get to a sort of grand windfall, but in the immediate point of time, it's all kind of they're figuring it out as they go.
Yes, they are.
Right? So there's that piece. So what are some of the opportunities specifically that these could create? Like, for example, I heard you say something right there, like the opportunity of having extra habitable space for the kids to stay, extra habitable space for mom and dad, which also can help with elderly care. Right? So they don't have to send them off to a home. They can actually have a space for them. They can get help there, and they can all stay right there on the property. What are some other opportunities that this thing can create?
I think a fourth one, a new windfall that I just thought of was, let's say we have the widowed elder person.
Okay.
They've owned the home for 40 years.
Okay.
And the house is way too big for them. Going to the home is a very expensive issue.
Yeah.
Moving downsize, you're going to pay a whole lot more in property taxes. So what if they build the second unit smaller the way that they want it, rent out the big one? Now they're actually making money. Their house is probably already paid off.
Right.
So that's another opportunity also.
Right. We also mentioned this the concept of having an extra little stream of income.
Yes.
You know, not getting specific about what actual platform may or not exist, and a lot of these are politically charged right now, but let's say you've got the home you live in now, it's becoming to be challenging in affordability. What if you could repurpose or even build brand new in some situations? We'll talk about that in a second. The actual scenarios, we'll kind of play them out as deep as we can. Build a second unit or repurpose a second unit. You live in the smaller unit in the back. You can be completely autonomous from the main house.
Yes.
Rent out the main house. You get to stay. So you don't have to sacrifice lifestyle. You can keep your friends, you know, and your routines and all the things that you've, you know, loved over the period of time that you've lived there and called that home.
And if you're a newlywed, you don't have the children yet, you live in the small one, and then as things change, you swap it out and rent out the other one.
Swap it out.
It's a good thing for the future where most people used to flip their homes every 5 to 7 years. just because the property tax is going up so much, that's a good reason why people are staying longer in those homes.
Yeah, and the cleaning up of a lot of the illegal stuff
Have
is
a couple
a
of
really
those already.
cool opportunity, right?
So code enforcement already bird dogged by the building jurisdiction. The way to clean them up is if it was an existing permitted garage. The only way to really clean it up is either make it go back to a garage or turn it into an ADU.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of those scenarios right now.
Yeah.
So it's
okay.
Perfect.
Fair enough. And now, if you're probably like me, and I even do this for a living, it's complicated enough. Let's just imagine that we got the pump primed to where people's attention and curiosity is piqued enough to say, okay, I wonder now if this applies to me.
Yeah.
So let's actually get into some. And by the way, you're welcome in advance. We've actually taken the time to take the, 2 or 3 most prevailing sort of types or styles of detached homes across the county, and then you can plug in your own area specifically. But to talk about what type of opportunities exists in the existing resale or structured market to be able to repurpose this new law in their advantage.
Right. So we're going to show you some site plans or plot plans with 2 scenarios, maybe the 1960s, the 70s, 80s tract
Okay, so
home.
we got one up on the screen now. So what are we looking at here?
So this basically you can see where it's called existing single-family dwelling, existing garage, and existing driveway.
Typical
So,
5,000 square foot single lot.
Yeah,
And that varies
exactly.
from area to area, but if again,
Right.
that's typical.
Right. So whether it was a 1-car garage or 2-car garage, a lot of the tract homes for many, many years was this setup. L-shaped, little bit of a driveway. And
and you can see the outer dotted or perforated line is the property line.
Right.
The inset one is the actual
building
setbacks.
setbacks
Right.
that most jurisdictions
So you can't
have.
improve beyond that margin.
That's correct.
And then you've got the main house in there, and you got the little garage that's California gabled
And
off
one
of
thing
it.
to point out here, where the existing driveway is, and that little dotted line shows about 5 feet before the garage. So prior to the passing of this law, I didn't get credit for my parking space until the back bumper was towards the garage past that setback.
Right.
Now I can use the driveway as long as my car doesn't pop out on the public right of way.
Ah,
Huge.
That's interesting.
Very huge. What it was and what it is now.
Okay.
Different.
Okay, already getting some traction on this. Okay, so walk us through this. So let's say that's you. Okay, now what now?
Let's go to the next slide. So
Okay.
in this scenario,
So we got, so the garage is highlighted now.
yes. So in this scenario, I have enough room to park on that driveway. So with this new law, I get to have that parking space as credit, where before I didn't. So this blue chunk is showing not building new structure, but repurposing an existing box to now have a kitchen, a bathroom. I can probably squeeze 1 bedroom, and this scenario is about 400 square foot.
Well,
Now I got a
that's
second unit.
And that's actually the greatest opportunity that exists. First of all, because it's already there. Second of all, it's the biggest structure other than the actual house itself. It's the easiest one to repurpose. Now, again, area specific in my experience, but for the most part, the challenge in the past before this new law was, okay, that's fine. If you're going to go do that, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, you got to give me another garage then. You can't just pirate the garage and add density to the neighborhood.
That is correct.
You got to give me a new garage, which then becomes totally expensive and sometimes could be the non-starter. So how does this now communicate with the new law?
Again, if it's less than 500 square foot or within a half mile of a transit stop, I don't even care.
Okay, let's say it's
so
not. Let's say it's
additional
not.
parking doesn't matter as much as it used to.
Okay, so let's say it's not within those parameters. Then what?
Then you might be looking at building on the back, and we have some slides there, building on the back. Or
Okay.
if you have a long tandem driveway.
Then what?
Now I can get credit for tandem parking where before I didn't get credit for tandem parking.
So say more about that. That's a good point. So
Okay.
clear that up.
So I'd like to go through these next 3 slides because this is
Okay.
the typical
Got it.
5,000
So you're
square
gonna get to
foot
that. Okay,
lot
cool.
in the 70s to 90s.
Dig it.
Okay. So then this slide showing the blue is repurposing a portion of that primary house.
And the portion's a key part, right? Because isn't there some mathematical equation
yes, there is.
that got to go down? Yeah.
So once I repurpose whatever the primary is left at, that blue portion cannot be no greater than 50% of the new square footage of that repurpose.
Got it. So let me just repeat what I heard you say. So even though that looks like about a third, give or take,
That's
of the
about it,
main
yeah.
house, it's not, what you're really doing is you're taking, it can't be more than half of the new house that's left.
Yes, correct.
Right. Okay, good.
So let's
So,
move.
but before moving on to this, so this can be tricky though, because a lot of these existing single-family dwelling units, right? There isn't a lot of fat left on those bones. You've got the kitchen. A lot of times the June Ward Cleaver style, very utilitarian. Maybe we call it a 1 or 2 butt kitchen.
Right.
You can't get too many butts in there. Maybe a dining room.
Little galley kitchen.
Little
right?
galley are very popular. Then a little living room adjacent. And then you got the hallway with the 2 or 3 beds and the 1 or 2 baths.
Right.
So what's a good opportunity where that little chunk of 50 of the next half that's left could actually be repurposed?
So when you look at walking up to where there's not blue, coming past the garage, that's usually the entryway.
Right.
So you usually have to the right,
Right.
coming in access from your garage into the kitchen, into
Right.
the dining of the family, things of that nature.
Right.
And then you're walking down a hallway to 3 or 4 bedrooms.
the bedrooms, right.
So I shorten the hallway. I make it a separate exit door off of the blue area.
Clever.
And so, yeah, it's real easy to convert and add a little kitchen. And
Yeah.
usually you have a back-to-back bathroom. You have your main bathroom off the hall, then the master's in one corner,
Yeah.
right, with the bathroom behind. So I'm going to use that plumbing tree to cut down the cost and make the kitchen and bath in that new unit, you know.
That
so-
wet wall right there to keep
Yes,
the cost down.
exactly.
Now, just a quick little follow-up on that. So let's say this is the case. Does the city or county want you to have, well, let me pose it as a question. What level of autonomy do they require, or do they want to see for this to be repurposed space to be now considered an ADU?
So the real simple rule, and not every building jurisdiction has adopted the full state. The state was a guideline.
Right.
The guidelines were a minimum of 150 square foot, a maximum of 50% of the primary if it's attached or within, whether it's a walkout basement, same level, or you added a whole new second story. If it was detached, let's say my primary house is only 800 square foot, I can actually have my detached new structure 1,200 square foot, which is really huge because old laws were 25 or 30% of the primary. Like I said, some jurisdictions, there's 19 here in San Diego, and there's I think 8 or 9 that have already repurposed their municipal ordinance for this new law. So some are taking like maybe a maximum of 700 or 640. Some are making them owner occupied. Some are not having them owner
That's
occupied.
another
So
point
that's
I wanna,
a big new thing.
I want to get to also. But I mean, so in terms of the autonomy, like do they have to be a wall that's severed from the contiguous part of the house? Does it have to have its own separate entrance with
So-
its own gate to the street? Like what type of requirements show up there?
So prior to the companion unit, if I repurpose like this L-shaped house, I had to have the front door for the second unit at least 50% back from the front of the building. Now I just have to have a second entrance, and it's not really stricken. So that helps me design a lot easier process.
Does it have to be severed off from the new?
I think you could have adjoining doors. The main thing is that it has its own kitchen,
Okay.
and it has its own bathroom.
Got it.
And it has its own entry.
Okay.
So whether it's in joining or not, I haven't really come up with that question.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, good. So let's go back to the sketches then. So are you complete with this one?
So we can move this slide up a little bit. The 50% of the primary.
Oh, the text
the
on the
other
bottom
way.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
yeah,
slide
you
that
go.
up. There we go.
So new, not old. So let's say the existing house was 1,500 square foot, and if I kept 1,000 of that square foot as my primary,
Okay.
that blue chunk is 500
That works.
max.
That works.
Okay, so you guys can do your math. If you have 1,200,
Yep.
pretty much it's 1/3 to 2/3.
Okay. Okay, good. Yep. All right, what do we got here?
So
Aha. So now we got a
this-
new.
This is build a brand new structure on the back of the
Yep,
home.
yep.
So I leave this home intact. I probably have a window that's facing the backyard. That's probably off a bedroom, so I got to get it to the side yard. 'Cause
Okay,
I have to have
right,
on a bedroom,
right.
ingress and egress
Fire
for
egress,
fire.
right.
Right. And then I can build the new unit exactly the way I want it.
And this is actually very popular, right? So I've got a ton of clients that have utilized this in situations where they just basically build a master bed and bath suite addition
Right.
when their family's on the grow or whatever, right? So now again, that goes back to the point. So how technically is this ADU thing different from that? Is it that you have to have those other requirements like we just talked about a minute ago?
I think when you were asking me the question and I didn't really give you an answer is, if I subdivide that primary into two, my party wall has to be fire and smoke sealed, electrical outlets and things like that.
Got it.
So there's fire life safety issues. One of the big things in these scenarios that we just showed is whether it's an existing garage, repurposing the primary house, or adding onto the primary house in the back. If your existing house does not have fire sprinklers, I do not have to add fire sprinklers.
Oh, and that could be
That's
expensive.
cost savings too.
Very much.
It's about $2, $3 a square foot. So that's something we haven't talked about.
Okay. Part of the relaxing of the law to kind of
Yes.
lubricate and pave this process for people to take advantage of. Okay, good. So what else about this one now?
So I think that's about it. In this scenario, we're showing if this was a new addition, but like you just said, some people have already made it when they've lived in the house 10, 15 years. They got some money, got their mortgage paid down, refinanced a couple times.
Yep.
They maybe already built this as a single family addition,
Right.
bigger master suite, best thing. It might be one of those things they add a kitchen into that, live in that, and now rent out the rest of the house as long as those proportions are 1/3, 2/3. Now they're actually making money
That's
off their
deadly.
mortgage.
That is deadly. Now, in a situation like this, it just goes back actually to the last slide, which is that now because it's contiguous with the house. Yeah, thank you, Claire. You're back. You're back to the percentages.
Yes,
because now it's already
exactly.
part of the house.
It's always a percentage, whether it's attached, 50%,
Right.
or detached, whatever the jurisdiction
Right.
says, up to 1,200, minimum 150.
Yeah, that is a very interesting opportunity. Because one of the challenges with the slide, the one before that, sorry, Claire, it's not your fault, it's mine. It's not you, it's me. Is that you're left with a fraction of what you had before. So you're living super Spartan in the 1,000 square feet now.
Right.
Whereas with the other one, maybe you got a little bit more wares to be able to lean on because you got a bigger footprint to begin with. And it's almost like it's already kind of engineered that way because it's got its own wet wall, it's got its own plumbing because it was a master bed and bath expansion.
Right, and because I brought like 11 different sides, the one on the end is what we can't do.
We'll get into that later.
And
don't
these
tease it out here,
basically,
Ian.
these basically is up to for each individual whether
Yeah.
they own that property
For sure,
already,
for sure.
or you're the realtor bird dogging and finding those properties, those opportunities.
Agreed.
So I think we've given them enough information that when we get through all these slides, they'll see my 70s home, and then they're going to go to the next slides back in the 30s, those detached garages, whether they had an alley or no alley.
And that next slide I think we're going to is where it's starting to get exciting because I just saw a big chunk of blue happening. Whoa!
Yes. Okay. So that's one where I can build a whole new 1,200 square foot
That looks
unit.
like a pool.
It looks like a pool, but I'll tell you what, you're going to get more income off of that than the pool.
That's true.
You don't have to worry about somebody
Dropping
falling in it and
knowledge
drowning.
here on Truth Radio Live. What are we calling it now, Claire? It doesn't matter.
Whatever.
Okay, so
Money maker, that's what that is.
So, that's a big bold bet.
Well, here's a good scenario. You either live in the primary because you got your attached garage, or you don't really need your garage and you can park on the driveway.
Okay.
And guess what? That house is maybe built in the 60s, 70s. Doesn't have an outlet on every wall. It's not got the greatest comfort. You build the 1,200 square foot for you, the way you want it, and let somebody live in the older one.
Now, what type of restrictions would you come up against here with this? Like, there's got to be, kind of like in the last one where it's like, okay, you can't, whatever you pirate off of the existing structure, you can't be more than 50% of what's left kind of thing. So what kind of things would they come up with here with this?
Okay, so the difference on this, and if everybody, when they're looking through these slides on their own time, looking at the property line and the setback, this is important. This is a brand new structure, this blue 1,200.
Sure.
So this is meeting the new setbacks, whatever the current setbacks are, because it's going to be a brand new structure.
Right.
This brand new structure is detached from the house.
Yep.
The main house probably does not have sprinklers unless it was built in the last 15 years.
The new one does.
This new one will require
Right.
sprinklers, and it will require the setbacks. Where my other slides where I took an existing garage, and my future slides with a detached garage, I don't have to worry about the setbacks.
Now, is there anything about this image we're looking at right now with that big blue rectangle that is a benefactor of the new law as perhaps, compared or contrasted from what existed before the new law? Like, forget about all this ADU stuff,
Okay.
right? It's 2016 again, and I just wanted to go build a second unit here, or Oh, maybe that's what it is your R1, it's zoning issue.
Let's go to that. So prior to this law, let's take this for example. I would never be able to build this large prior to January 1, 2017. Because one, whether we called it a guest quarters, an accessory apartment, companion unit, it might have been limited to 640 to 700 square foot.
That's it.
And I had to do an additional off-street parking space.
Ah, that's deadly.
Yeah, because that extra parking space was outside of that front yard setback. So a lot of people call me and say, I can park 3 or 4 cars in my driveway. Prior to this law, I got no credit from the planning department for those spaces.
Right.
That's when we talked about you can convert your garage if you get another garage, but again, that new garage had to be behind that front yard setback.
Yeah. That's
so, I mean, the way that the houses were laid out in tract homes, the 50 by 100 lot, then we went, 45 by 90, things of that nature, is we didn't lay them out with less than 5 or 4 foot from the property line. So there's a few tracts that might take 1 out of 10 homes in that tract to give RV parking. So unless I have access, I can't really build another garage without really ripping down the garage. So you have to look at building in the back, and that limits you as well.
And you know the math, right? I mean, if you pick an area well and it's going for 500 a foot, I mean, ground up, I mean, what we just use the dummy, what is it, like 250 a foot, hoping you don't run into any
That's
big
a good average size with very basic plumbing fixtures, not top of the line.
Right.
$250 a square foot is probably a good mean example.
Right, and now you could actually pull that off in a typical lot scenario existing strategy, whereas before this law, you'd be stuck because there'd be all these other things that would be kind of thwarting it.
Yeah,
like the
not only were
parking
you
issue
trying
and
to build the home, you were trying to get the additional parking and cement and other structures.
Right.
Now, I don't have to do as much.
Right.
I don't have to redevelop as largely as I did before.
Right. That's a big one, man. Okay, cool. So what else? What do we got next?
Let's go, okay, so this would be something like built in the 30s. A detached garage.
Okay, so now we're starting to see the carriage houses.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So the previous slides were kind of my newer homes, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And then, after that, we started getting these big boxes.
Right.
So I didn't even go into those.
Yeah.
But this is another set of examples in these next slides showing my existing home, my existing garage, as it sits today. And you can see.
Big, deep driveway.
When we call the building department, because a lot of people do their own research.
Yeah.
So the planning department is going to give you the main building setbacks.
Right.
The detached garage is an accessory structure. So unless you ask, there's more relaxed setbacks for a non-habitable structure.
And you can see this is very common, right? Like even up here in the, Normal Heights, North Park, Ken's, all those old, like where you get the almost zero lot line for the little carriage house, right?
Right, so we really started out maybe in 1910, 20s, zero rear and side, whether they had an alley or not.
Right.
Then we might have skipped 10 or 15 years and we went 1 foot.
Right.
Maybe then another 10 or 15 years to 30 inches.
Right.
Then we got, 4 foot.
That was all mainly for fire reasons, so legitimate, but you're kind of truncating your ability to improve the lot.
So again, we're showing a whole new set of slides, existing house, existing garage.
Right.
Now let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
So in this scenario, because that garage was permitted, keywords existing permitted, not just built some time ago, never permitted, but permitted as it sits. I don't have to worry about setbacks. If it's existing, I don't have to fire sprinkler it. I might have to do some fire life safety to it. If there's a window too close to the property line, I might have to make it fire rated or close it in. But I've got a box. I put a kitchen and a bathroom in, it's at least 150 square foot. That is a fast ROI in any situation.
And
that's a second unit.
To a lot of inventory.
And this is going to help me clean up a lot of illegal units, whether they're voluntarily doing it or they got a code enforcement case. So let's go to the next one. So this is a little interesting.
Okay.
I've showed basically a 2-story expansion over a garage.
Aha. Okay, good.
So this is a new scenario. If I had my existing garage, now my new structure above only has to be 5 foot from my side yard and 5 foot from my rear yard setback. I can expand that blue box up the page or to the left of the page, but I'm just showing you again, because of my existing garage that was permitted below, it gave me a lot more opportunity going above.
Now this is deadly. right?
Yeah, you look at 13 foot in most RS17 City of San Diego
Right.
zoned lots. I don't have to go back as far.
Right. Right.
Into
Now,
the
of
yard.
course, if we're being fair, there's, you're going to get structural costs, because whatever was there originally,
I
first
might
of
have
all,
to
was
beef
from
it up to hold that second story load.
well, for sure. And also, whatever was there is probably pretty antiquated at best, considering its inception point being from the early chunk of the century. So you're going to fall into a little bit of that. But if you can pull it off and the numbers make sense, you're not pirating your garage. You keep your single car garage and still get the unit up top.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a big deal because, not to get too far off of topic here, but, if you just do some basic quant analysis on what a home sells for in San Diego that has a garage versus one that doesn't.
Well, let's think about that last slide a minute. So if I actually made above the garage go further into the yard, now I actually created some patio underneath.
Yellow carport.
And what happens in most of my lots, I have a 6-foot fence, right? You're blocked from any view. Now, you might be making it to where it's larger than the picture showed, creating view. I get more wind through the home. It's more creature comfort. I'm going to move out of the big house and make that second unit the one for me, the king.
That's interesting. You're
I can do a lot.
absolutely right.
As being a design drafting company
Create a
for
little
32
perch.
years, I've actually permitted over 3,000 structures. By my niche in 1991, permitting non-permitted
Yeah.
code issues,
Yeah.
maybe non-code issues, it's made a better designer out of me.
Yeah.
I can take a lot of different scenarios and do a little problem solving before they go hire somebody. Hopefully they'll hire me to do the drafting and design and permit processing.
Well, they saw
I don't
you
do
on-
any building.
They saw you on TV.
Well, I didn't gain this knowledge of white overnight.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
I'm having fun with this new law.
Yeah.
I'm trying to educate as many people as I can because there's a lot of opportunity out there.
I want to get back on the slides, man.
Okay.
I'm juiced to what's okay.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so we're already on the next one
Okay,
here.
so now this one is leaving the garage and repurposing 2/3, 1/3 on the existing home.
Back to what we talked about
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yep. Fair enough.
So it's just basically
You're just showing it in this other type of home
Right.
that you're going to see
exactly
in some of the older.
So not to confuse our viewers more than I had to, I picked 4 slides with one type of error house and 4 slides with another type of error house.
That's actually a good point. So I think you said this already, but I want to make this clear. So it's not uncommon for these old craftsman type, and I actually even the more pedestrian of those bungalows before they even went to the kind of craftsman, like the old adobe and some of the Spanish stuff, right? That are really small. Like the existing structure sometimes is only 1,000, 1,100, sometimes even less square foot.
Oh yeah, there's
So
a lot
is-
that were like 800, 960.
That's what I'm saying.
720, we saw some 640s,
So is there a minimum size requirement for the existing house to be able to consider this?
No, none.
None.
None. In fact, that's a good point. With this law, it's not a vacant lot. It's a lot that already has a primary home on it.
Right.
Then I can add the ADU.
Right.
I'm already getting a lot of buzz from developers and realtors that, and I've done a feasibility study showing how I can take an acre and break it into 2 additional lots. In the case that I'm talking about now was in Santee. I actually showed a pad for the house, a pad for the ADU. I'm getting a lot of buzz that a lot of people are going to want to probably build right from the get-go. And I'm sure the building departments are going to say the primary has to be built and finalized before you live in the second unit.
Okay.
So most of these scenarios,
Just to take advantage of the law, basically,
Yeah.
which is relaxed and
so a lot of people are moving
definitely
past what this
advantage.
law was, allowing you to have a existing primary home on a lot and do a second unit.
Right.
I'm getting a lot of people that have the money, the big bucks.
Right.
They want to just go develop 2 houses on new land or new subdivisions.
Okay.
We're getting there.
Okay. Okay.
So then again, this is this same
Yeah,
scenario
okay.
with a new addition on
Sure.
the back.
Got it. Yeah, and I feel like we covered that. So good. Okay.
That's a new detached structure.
Got it.
Again, I would have to follow, since it's brand new, the blue cube that we're showing
Right.
is meeting my setbacks.
Okay.
It would have to have fire sprinklers. And pretty much as long as I meet my scenarios, and watch the planning on the height, there's no reason why I can't have this as a 2-story.
Yeah, and I'll interject here too, if you're just kind of catching this and you know, thumbing through this in a mental picture for yourself. The fact that it's a detached new structure has some advantages. The autonomy of it, the fact that you can rent it out, kind of its own little, well, granny flat, mother-in-law suite, whatever you want to call it. That's true. But from a appraisal and valuation perspective, it's something to consider because, you know, of course, not
Now
an
it's not
appraiser.
a 50-year lifespan. It's probably got a 100-year lifespan.
Well,
'cause
there's
it's
that
brand
too.
new.
There's that too, right? But I mean, even from like an evaluation perspective, they might look at that a little differently than if it was contiguous with the main house. The fact that it's a separate detached unit sometimes gets considered differently in terms of its cost per square foot. Even if it's living space, and again, it's case by case kind of scenario there, but that's something to think about. Not to mention the fact that the city is probably going to be much kinder with you if you just tap into the existing plumbing, tap into the existing mechanical, tap into the existing electrical, than having to run something brand new to a brand new structure.
I think there's some pluses and some minuses. Again, everybody's going to look at their own individual case study, whether they own it or they're looking to buy it and put it on there. So we've kind of just opened up a little teaser today.
Sure.
And if they build new, it's going to cost more, but it's going to have really no problems for a lot of years because it's going to be built brand new to today's current standards.
Right.
It's going to have a lot more ambient temperature than single glazed glass, raised wood floor, cold underneath it, plaster walls, no insulation in the walls or attic or, you know, crawl space. So building new is going to be primo. You know, and
enough.
detached, the other thing it does, whether it's detached new or detached existing garage, a lot of people are already or have done or want to do a little fence between the 2 yards so that you have individual living space.
No question. Yeah.
You know, I've had one where they said, my pool doesn't bring me any return, let's fill in the pool and build right there.
Yeah, I can see it.
So,
Okay, good. We got any left? Aha.
the last one
This one looks different.
went
It's got
to
writing
red.
on it.
I went to red purposely.
Okay.
So this new law, the simplicity of it.
Okay.
If I have a primary, I can add an ADU.
Okay.
1 + 1 = 2.
Okay.
This scenario, I have a duplex on the front, unit
Okay.
1 and unit 2. Don't get to do the red space.
Does not apply to multi-family units.
So let's say we have a multifamily zone R2.
Okay.
And the density is 1 unit per 3,000.
Right.
Okay. But because of the density, I might be able, let's say it's a 9,000 square foot lot. If it's 1 to 3,000, technically it's an R3. So I can't use the new law, I use the underlying law. So single family or multifamily, but if the density allows more than 2, I have to go to the underlying zone. A little confusing, but this picture is if you already have 2 units, don't call me for an ADU. I can't do it. Repurpose the 2 into 1. Let's build a new structure in the back. That's the scenario for you.
Interesting. Gang,
Take a breath, huh?
that's a drink from a fire hose right there.
It's a lot of information. I enjoy my job. I do it well. I had fun here today, Jesse. Thank you for having me on.
And you know, the truth also is probably a good opportunity if you are catching this on the live stream or the post-production over on the YouTubes or what have you, and you're peaked and you're in San Diego County, you could probably imagine how this needs to be a conversation, right? So we'll call this the starter. Hello, nice to meet you. How would somebody be able to take their own situation and see if any of this applies for themselves?
Look at my slides. Give me a call. Can I give my information how to contact me?
Russia's listening.
Okay. 619-579-0088. Once again, 619-579-0088. Then go to my website, permitprosd.com. That's permitprosd.com.
Cool. Gang, appreciate you hanging out. Ian, you left us better than how you found us, my man. We'll put some resources down below and wherever you're catching this, and we'll catch you next time.
Happy New Year.